And that brings us to our roll call time. And so, if you guys will, in the comment section, let us know who you are, where you live, what grade you're in. If you're a parent and you're not in grades anymore, that's okay. We want to know who you are too. And in recognition of our special guest today, our question of the day is, what is your favorite video game? Michael, what's your favorite video game?
Wow. Well, currently it is, and I might get a few eye rolls out there or bringing a few people back into the day, but original Mario Brothers and Zelda. We hooked up. I think it was probably the first Wii system the other day. My kids have loved it, so I have the theme music. So the last few nights going to bed, like those are the two theme musics that I've been listening to in my head.
That is really fun. That's pretty old school. So
It is.
one of my one of my old favorite games is Stardew Valley. Its precursor before that was Harvest Moon, and it's a game about farming. Which I know you probably wouldn't look at me and be like, "Wow, she must enjoy farming," but digital farming sounds pretty fun.
It does sound fun. It kind of paved a way, and I have a feeling that our next guest knows all about Stardew Valley. Maybe we'll see in just a minute. But okay, dreamers and doers, again, thank you for joining us today. And here's the format. Each link with Loveworks, you're going to get a chance to hear from a special guest, and they're going to talk about not only their dream, but perhaps some of the challenges that they encountered along the way. And most importantly to you, are what are some real practical steps that you can take to get from where you are today to the place that you want to get to tomorrow?
And to warm you up for today's interview, we have a question that's going to give you a chance to also win a prize. And so today's trivia question is, what was the first video game? So first person to give us the correct answer is going to get a prize mailed directly to their house this week.
What's interesting about that question is our guest actually took a surprise picture with this particular individual. So let's meet our dreamer and doer, Carolyn, that we've been waiting for. His name is none other than Brent Wheelbarger.
That's right. Brent Wheelbarger is the founder and CEO of Trifecta Communications, a media and technology company specializing in advertising, production, and emerging technology. Trifecta started in a room next to Brent's garage and has since grown to serve governmental, nonprofit, and also business clients in Oklahoma and internationally. Brent is also the co-founder of Viribus VR Labs, along with Bob Eskew and Tony Williams, a tech startup developing virtual reality therapy tools for children with cerebral palsy. In addition, Brent is involved in collaboration with Trifecta Communications and Loveworks Leadership to create a student-run business called Risk World that's run by middle school and high school students.
Hello, Brent.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It is going well. I feel like we just ran a marathon listening to all that you do.
Uh, well, you mentioned that I got to meet the guy who made the first video game, but I don't think we should say who it is because that might give people they probably wouldn't, but it might give people a hint as to what it was. But that was like a big deal getting to meet that. That was like one of my childhood heroes, that guy. So
is that by chance a screensaver right now on your iPhone 4?
I don't think the iPhone 4 allows for screensavers. It's not that far along, but if it was, then sure, yeah.
Well, Brent, we're thrilled to have a fellow dreamer and doer with us today. So as you know the theme, we love to talk about a dream. We love to talk about how you got there. But Brent, if you don't mind, could you take us back to your childhood? So you might have to rewind just a few years, but we would love to hear just what was it like for you growing up? And then how did you develop this passion and this love for technology?
I don't know how or why I developed a passion and love for technology. I really don't. But I do recall as a child, my parents, as long as I can remember, subscribed to Time magazine. And so I think beginning probably in early middle school, I would read Time magazine from cover to cover. When it came in, it was like a comic book for me. It was like, oh, Time magazine arrived in the mail, and I would get it and I would just like dive into it. I mean, I'm probably the only kid in middle school in the 80s that had a subscription to Omni magazine, which Omni was this futurist kind of magazine that they had back then. They don't even publish it anymore. It would have been the forerunner to Wired. magazine. If you think of what Wired is today, well, Omni was Wired back then. And that was the same deal. Those were my comic books, so to speak. I was all about that. And it just got me, I don't know, I just interested in stuff, just all kinds of stuff. I do recall in middle school building a hovercraft for my science fair project. And in high school, I built a semiconductor for my science fair project. And, and my entire childhood, almost from the moment I could even think about what I wanted to be up until when I was in later years of high school, I really wanted to be an astronaut. And that was the deal. And so I'm a huge space buff. I'm very excited to see the SpaceX rocket launch recently with 2 American astronauts on board. Very cool. But I wanted to be an astronaut right up until AP Calculus. And then I decided no trip to space is worth having to do this every single day. And so, and I had a bevy of teachers that said, Brent, you really struggle with AP Calculus, but you're really good at English and speaking in public and things like that. Have you considered possibly changing your idea of what you might want to be? And so I did. But thanks to some well-intentioned teachers. I would also say a big standout for me in my childhood, and this would have been high school. I kind of on a lark, I took a trip I became a student ambassador to the United States and took a trip to the Soviet Union, which this was a year before the thing fell off a cliff. And so I got to see behind the Iron Curtain right before the Iron Curtain was no more. And it really did shape a lot of my views about entrepreneurialism and democracy and capitalism and the value of those things, being able to see a place where they didn't exist. And so, I think, and that comes back to the idea of just being interested in stuff. And it just sounded like an interesting opportunity. And so I did that. And it really had a huge, profound impact on my worldview for the, up till now.
I love that. It sounds like you were, hungry with discovery of just finding out more and more. And I like the part of your bio where it shares like you started in a room next to the garage. And so it's funny, we hear about these like tech startups that start in a garage. You're almost there. You're in a room right next to it. Can you tell us about the garage?
Well, like you said, the garage is just a garage, but the room next to the garage is our little home office. And it's actually nestled between the laundry room and the garage. And so there was a time when I was making videos out of that little office where I had a VO booth set up in the laundry room, which was right next to the cat litter box. And so I would set my computer to record, and then I would go around to this little VO booth to read the narration for whatever the video was in that room. And that was pre-Trifecta. That was just kind of freelancing, doing things on my own, but it paved the way for a company, and so you can do amazing things in the room next to your garage, between your laundry room and your garage. It isn't always the space that matters as much as it is what you do there. So, yeah.
I love what you said. The space, doesn't matter. It also like the small beginning either. Like, I love where it says like, do not despise, the day of small beginnings. And so that's where you're started. And a lot of things have emerged, Brent, since then. I jokingly said that I was just exhausted listening to the amount of things, that you do. But there's a special project today that we wanted to spend a little bit of time learning just more about and the story behind it. And it's Viribus. But what's kind of unique about this story is, it didn't necessarily start later in life, but actually you began to learn about a dream from Bob Eskew at 14. So could you give us a little context there and tell us just how Viribus started?
Sure. So Bob Eskew is a physical therapist here in Oklahoma City. He specializes in pediatric physical therapy for children with cerebral palsy. The reason that he has that particular specialty is because he himself has cerebral palsy. And I've known Bob, and so he's one of the partners in Viribus. I've known him since, as Michael said, since I was 14. Bob was one of my scoutmasters in my Boy Scout troop when I was a kid. And so back then, I didn't know this. He never said anything about this, but he had this dream in the 90s of creating a virtual reality therapy for kids with CP. And virtual reality back in the 90s is not Oculus. It is not what it is today. We're talking Lawnmower Man, if anyone gets that reference. And it was rough. And so it just wasn't far enough along to do anything with what he had envisioned. Years later, I became the scoutmaster of that Boy Scout troop. I grew up and they came back and said, "Hey, would you run this troop for a bit?" And I said, "Sure." And Bob's son Will joined that troop as a kid. And so Bob reconnected and kind of the circle going all the way around there. So I was his son's scoutmaster. And we reconnected. And then at some point along the way, Bob shared that he had this dream of virtual reality for therapy. And I shared that my company was doing AR, VR work. And the light bulb kind of went off in both of our heads. And we decided, well, this is interesting. So we, after a lot of thought and contemplation, decided let's start a company. Let's start a company that addresses this important challenge of helping kids with CP recover better. And there's huge challenges and with those kids and getting through therapy and seeing positive outcomes. It's very difficult. And so creating tools that can accelerate that process and make it more productive is a big deal. And particularly for the kids that are dealing with that, but even for someone that doesn't have CP, being able to see those kids in his clinic and see the challenges they're facing and recognize that if we can wield technology in a way to improve their lives, that will make a huge difference for them. And who knows what difference it could make for the rest of the world as well.
Brent, I was just taken back when I heard about some of the early results that you're seeing just with kids. I'd love for people to see it visually, and we'll share ways that people can do that. But can you talk about some of the impact and results that you're seeing with these kids?
So here's the thing about therapy. And I'm sure some of you that are watching this may have been to physical therapy before. Maybe you sprained a shoulder or broken arm or something. You had to go to the PT and you had to, you were there for a couple weeks and you went to the clinic and you did some exercises. You went home. And they probably gave you a worksheet or something that said, "Hey, you need to take these red and blue bands with you and do these things at home." And probably you didn't do them. If you did, it was, you're in the minority. Most people just do it. And for us, that's okay. I mean, we'll recover one way or the other. It may not be as graceful as they would like for it to be, but you're going to get better eventually. A kid with CP, that's not how it works. If they're not doing their therapy, not only are they not getting better, they're getting worse. There's no, we're just going to be in the middle. It's either they're getting better or they're getting worse. And the way they get better really comes down to a process called neuroplasticity. And that's a fancy word for rewiring the brain. The brain is an incredible thing. And in certain instances, it can rewire around damaged areas. And a kid with CP, they have brain damage. They have damage in their brain that's causing things to not function correctly. And so through lots and lots of repetition, you can create, in certain instances, rewiring around those damaged areas, but it has to be a lot. And so when you go to the clinic and you do your therapy there for an hour, and then you go home and you don't come back to the clinic for another week, there's no way you're going to be able to get that kind of repetition to cause neuroplasticity to occur. And so the idea is they need to do this at home. They need to be doing it at home. And Bob begs them to do it at home, but they really just don't. And so if you could turn it into something fun and exciting, then that would increase the odds that they would do it at home. But then there's something else even more magical than that. And that is the latest research that seems to indicate that virtual reality can actually accelerate the brain's ability to rewire. And it's a long discussion that I won't go into all the details of why that is, but there's a growing body of research, peer-reviewed research, that's showing that to be the case, that through that visual input the brain is getting in an immersive VR environment married with repetition, that neuroplasticity actually accelerates. And so that's why we chose to do it the way that we're doing it. And the little bit of work that we've done so far, we're still in the preliminary stages. The product hasn't rolled out yet, but it will be very soon. Is that kids love VR and they love being in that environment, and that they do it more, when they are. And so, if we can accelerate a kid's ability to rewire and make it fun too, it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, that seems like a no-brainer for sure. I mean, I love that. And it's a project that started I mean, basically when you were 14, or this dream and this idea. And it was, I mean, Viribus was scheduled to launch in the middle of this pandemic. So how did you personally work through this? And I mean, what could have been looked at a setback and as a disappointment? How did you work through it?
Well, that's a great question. So yeah, we actually had a big launch plan for May. Ironically, one of Bob's childhood friends is Toby Keith. They went to high school together and are good friends. And so Bob has been sharing with Toby Keith what we've been working on, and he became very interested in it and wanted to support it. And so we put together a big launch event that included Toby Keith being there as a headline for that. The Oklahoma City Thunder was scheduled to be there. And it was just a big deal. We had people flying in from all over the country. We were going to set up a kind of a media tour thing with an outfit out of Los Angeles to publicize it nationally. We had all this stuff set up, and then the pandemic hit, and it became impossible to orchestrate what we had intended at that point. And so we had to pull the plug on all those big launch ideas. And now looking back in hindsight, I'm kind of glad we did, because not that it's a bad thing, but we were pedal to the metal. I mean, pushing it immensely to meet that date when Toby Keith was available for that launch event. And the fact that we had to push it back, we sort of decided, well, this is an opportunity to make our product better, vet our product more, have a better product when it goes to market. And we're still going to do that launch event. We just pushed it back now to the fall, which has also changed our marketing approach. Rather than trying to push this thing out in May, we're going to push it out in the fall. We're going to position it as, the most incredible Christmas gift a kid with CP could ever get is a virtual reality video game system that's just for them. It's not a game system designed for their peers that they're going to struggle to use. It's a game system designed just for them. And so on Christmas Day, they'll be able to open up the coolest gift under the tree will be theirs. It won't be some therapy bands or something like that. It'll be this awesome, incredible gift that their peers will all want, but they'll have to get in line because it's theirs. So, so that's our plan right now. So we still, we have all those ideas, the big launch event. We pushed it back to the fall. We've taken advantage of that time to get the product refined. And so, you just kind of take the cards that are dealt you and play them.
Brent, and you're playing them well. If you don't mind, I'd even just like to park here just for another minute or two, because you talk about this pivot. I mean, something that your team, you, Tony, Bob, have been working on for years, invested a lot of time and money, and you've just said that just so casually. You change course and direction. And I think if there's one thing that all of us right now, those that are watching and listening, have in common, that over the last 13 to 14 weeks, we've faced some kind of setback, some kind of challenge, some kind of disappointment. And there's some people out there that are really struggling, and knowing what to do next. And so maybe talk about just like your mindset, like how do you position yourself, to keep moving forward and to be so positive?
Well, that's a great question. I think, Michael, a short answer to that is filling the tank. I'm naturally optimistic and I'm naturally forward thinking, and it's just how God made me. But even still, the tank can only hold so much. And so when I say filling the tank, my favorite podcast. I mean, I'm on the edge. It's like Time Magazine all over again. It's American Innovation on Wondery. And I love listening to that podcast because really it's history. It's the history of innovation. And they tell these stories. And it's like every story is the same. Every one of them is the same with different product, different idea, different concept, but the same routine. And it's basically this. Someone notices a problem that needs to be solved. They get these incredibly innovative ideas to solve it. They go out to try it and it doesn't work. And there's all kinds of problems and people tell them they're crazy and stupid and what are you doing and so on and so forth. And then in every single instance, they persevere. They push through those things. They get a lucky break, but they got the lucky break because they were pushing through. If they had given up, the lucky break would have evaporated. It wouldn't have even been there to be lucky. And so, it's the same every time. This is what they do. And when you start filling your tank with that kind of stuff and realizing it's not a problem, it's just how it is. There are going to be, George Lucas, when he was creating Star Wars, he said, you have to believe in your dream so much that you're willing to push through all the brick walls that will inevitably be constructed in front of you. And you have to be prepared for that. And so, when you know that, and when you see it play out over and over again, and then when it happens to you, it's kind of like, okay, we can do this. This is not the end of the road. This is just, I'm just part of this grand story, that has played out many times before, and I'm getting to play in this story now. And so, I think that's the key, is just being filled. And then marrying that with being exploratory. I mean, being interested in things and going out and exploring, whether it be physically exploring the world or ideas or concepts, or getting to know people that are different than you, and interacting with those folks, because all that's going to feed into the tank. And then when you run into those roadblocks, some random experience or someone that you met or some chance encounter that you had down the line may play into it, and you use it to kind of carry you through that. So I think that may be the gist of it.
Yeah, I mean, filling your tank is incredibly important. I can definitely agree with that, and the methodology behind it. And I mean, that preparing us for when uncertain things happen. We love talking about dreams here, and so we wanted to ask, what big dreams do you have for Trifecta, for Risk World, and also for Viribus?
Oh, okay. Well, let me start with Trifecta. So Trifecta is a funny little company. We don't really fit in a nice, neat little box. We're not a law firm. We're not a PR firm, but we are a PR firm. But we're not an advertising agency, but we are an advertising. We're not a tech company, but we are a tech company. And so we're kind of in this weird space. But my goal for Trifecta is to continue to push AR and VR into new territory, specifically in the state of Oklahoma, and looking for ways to really reinvent things using that kind of technology. And, Viribus is a great example of that, taking VR and turning it on its head in a way that actually connects people closer to the physical space rather than taking them away from it. You go into VR to get stronger so you can do things in the physical world. That's different than what you think of with VR. Normally it's like, oh, you're just escapism or something. But that's an example, taking the technology and pushing it in new directions in Oklahoma. And the big challenge is to get Oklahoma companies to go along for the ride, and pay for those sort of things, or at least pay us to do them. So we are always kind of out on a roadshow trying to convince the state that this is important. And if I could give a plug, the middle of this month, our company decided in the middle of the pandemic, and this was actually an inspiration that came from Loveworks. Michael posted something about oh goodness, I'm having a moment now. Isaac Newton in 1666. This was a special year for him. He came up with all of his big formulas for calculus and gravity and all the things that we know of, the apple falling from the tree. And 1666 was also the year that he was quarantined at home because of a pandemic of his era. The bubonic plague was spreading everywhere. He was enrolled at Cambridge University. Cambridge was closed, so he was stuck at home. And he came up with all this wonderful stuff. And he called it his Year of Wonders. And so we decided to take that idea and run with it. And so we're doing what we're calling a Wonder Grant. And it's actually a $15,000 grant that we're offering to Oklahoma companies, nonprofits, or governmental agencies to implement AR or VR in some capacity in their business. And we have a panel outside of Trifecta that will be reviewing that. And the panelists are incredible. Ken Parker, the CEO of Next Thought, is one of them. Vaughn Royal, the executive director of OneNet, which is the internet system for higher education in Oklahoma, and a variety of other great folks are all going to be part of that panel to judge those entries. And again, it's a $15,000 project for free. And it's a way, again, it comes back to our mission. We really want to seed this technology in our state. The only requirement is you have to be based in Oklahoma. So those are kind of examples of the kind of direction we want to take Trifecta and helping to drag the rest of the state along with this. As it relates to, yeah, and real quick,
is Risk World eligible? Or
I don't know if that'd be a conflict of interest or not. It might be, but sure, why not? Yeah, let them apply. The application will be open June 15th. So that'll be up on the internet June 15th. As far as Viribus, we just want to get that product into as many kids' homes as we can. And we've kind of talked about that. And then Wrist World is a lot of fun. And my dreams for Wrist World are huge. I hope that these kids can experience a product that goes nationwide, that sells all over the country, maybe even internationally, and continues to spawn new products from the original one. And that someday we'll look back at the original Wrist World product and be like, golly, who even agreed to buy this? Because look at where we are now. Look how much better it is and neater and all that. Not that it's not a great product, it is, but I just hope that thing continues and that it becomes a thing that extends beyond this initial product.
Brent, so good. I love nothing more than hearing just dreams just from, other dreamers and doers, like yourself. I don't say this to flatter you, but I think you're gonna be one of those guys that's gonna be too busy to write a book, and someone's gonna be writing a book about you and what you're doing, how you're using your company to impact so many people's lives. Brent, there's something that we have, that you have, that you'll have in common with each of our previous guests, and it's answering this question. And as you know, Loveworks primarily works with middle school and high school students. And so would you just take just a minute and, give us some advice? What advice would you give perhaps to your former middle school or high school self?
So right off the top, what I would tell myself back in middle school or high school is that nobody in middle school or high school has it all together. I don't care whether it looks like they do or not, they don't. They may pretend like they do and act like they do, but they don't. Nobody does. So don't worry about them. Don't worry about all those other people because they don't have it together either. So don't worry about that. Instead, worry about something that matters to you and get really, really focused on thinking about something that matters to you. And if you don't have anything that matters to you, then get really, really focused on finding something that matters to you. And then get focused on doing something relating to what matters to you. Because I think that, that natural just sort of honing in on something that you're passionate about creates momentum all into itself. And after a while, you don't even have to carry that. It carries you, and don't worry so much about everybody else. Instead, really get focused on those things that you're passionate about and that matter to you, and put them out there in the world and cause other people to care about them too.
Brent, thank you for sharing that. Where, Carolyn, was this interview when I was 16 years old?
Right?
Seriously. I mean, again, I love what Brent said much earlier, just the people that he was surrounded with that, paid attention to the things that he was doing and interested in. And then, again, like focusing on those things that matter to you. And if you don't know what it is, like find something. So Brent, that's the only time that we're going to give you to catch your breath because we want to give you 1 minute. And this is a chance for you to just link everything up together. And Carolyn's got her stopwatch ready to go. And we're going to give you 1 minute to just share something that really could just further encourage the dreams in our hearts. So are you ready?
I'm ready. And I wrote this down, so I'm going to kind of read it because if I didn't write it down, then it would be the 5-minute wrap up instead of the 1 minute. So I thought I'm going to write it down. So I'm going to kind of look over to the side and read this when we do this.
That is okay. So here we go. Ready, set, and go.
Okay. So one of our Trifecta team members on a trip to Bangladesh with the U.S. State Department ended up meeting with a gentleman named Mohammed Yunus. Yunus is a Bangladeshi who won the Nobel Prize for his work in creating microloans for people in impoverished countries. This was an entirely new concept at the time he introduced it. And he sort of made it his thing to use innovation to stamp out poverty. Now, here's his strategy. According to him, quote, "Whenever I see a problem, I immediately go and create a company. That's what I do." And I thought that was a really cool free market approach to fixing things. But these companies he speaks about, they don't just make money, they make the world better on purpose. On purpose. And he follows this usually with something that, like this, quote, "Once poverty is gone, we'll need to build museums to display its horrors to future generations." Now that's a bullish statement. That's enthusiasm, that is belief, that's faith. And I agree with Mr. Eunice. I personally believe the world belongs to enthusiastically creative innovators with unwavering faith that the world can be better and determination to use their God-given talents to make it so. And that would be my challenge to everybody watching this. It's fine to go out and make money, but what if you could also make the world better too?
Brent, that was awesome. I loved how thoughtful that was. And just, I mean, it totally encapsulates how you've used entrepreneurship as a means to socially make us better. And so thank you for doing that. Thank you for all of the hard work that you've done for not just Oklahomans, but I mean, literally the world. So, so thank you for that. We are going to give Brent a short break. Now is the time. If you have questions for Brent, drop those in our comment section. We're going to give him a short break. He'll come back for some Q&A in just a little bit, where we're going to share about our digital resources real fast.
Absolutely. And as questions are coming in, we just want to remind you the place that you can find all things digital with Loveworks. And that's just on our website, loveworksleadership.org. And you're going to see several ways that you, family and student, can really just engage in some great leadership resources. It's also the place, too, that you'll be able to find out more information about our food drive that's going to benefit a local food and shelter here in Norman on June 6th. But then also, too, today, we just wanted to take a brief moment and highlight something we're really excited about, and it's our at-home leadership courses. Carolyn, you, the team, you've been so hard at work. And so can you share with us where we're at today with At Home?
Yeah, so we are actually on our 10th lesson that's been released this morning. And so I'm really excited. It's our second block. So we've released a lesson each week for the last 10 weeks, which is so wild to me. But you can actually log on online now at loveworksleadership.org, and all of those lessons are available. You can work on them at your own pace, but when you finish all 10, we'll actually send you a Loveworks themed sticker pack. And another really fun opportunity we have up and coming on this Wednesday is an engineering concepts with Miss Lily. And so this is a virtual class that you can take. You can actually pick up a free kit at the Loveworks Center. But we're going to be building egg cradle designs so that you can actually enter a competition that we're having on at-home leadership.
Carolyn, great job that you and the team have done. I think it's just one of the neatest new projects that we've started here at Loveworks. Well, all right, we are going to bring Brent back, and we have a couple questions, Brent, that we want to ask you. So are you ready for just a little bit more?
Sure, bring it on.
All right, so one question we have for you is, can you tell us about someone who's been one of your biggest inspirations? So no holds barred. It could be any industry, but who's someone that's been one of your biggest inspirations and why?
Okay, I'm going to give you two people. One is Benjamin Franklin, and the other is Walt Disney, and both for basically the same reason. These are two guys that found themselves interested in all sorts of things. We have to consider that Benjamin Franklin is one of our founding fathers, incredibly involved and engaged in politics, but he also did experiments with kites and electricity. You know, if you remember the old story of him with the key on the kite, and I mean, he was a scientist. He was an innovator in his era. He was also a newspaper guy. We publish a magazine and more, by the way. It's another thing Trifecta does. And so I have that kindred spirit with him in the newspaper industry. And, and so he just had all these interests, and yet somehow they all seem to tie together. Walt Disney, exactly the same. Here you have a guy that is into cartoons, movies, television shows, theme parks, robotics, futurism, transportation, space travel, all this stuff, you name it. And he managed to wrap it all together seamlessly and make sense, by connecting all those dots together, disparate things, and turning them into new products and new ideas and new concepts that have shaped the world. Both of those guys, I've always sort of held up as role models in different ways. I also love Benjamin Franklin in that he was always trying to these self-improvement ideas that he had. He had these little books where he'd try to, and he was pretty upfront about how he tried and usually was unsuccessful in making himself, he was very transparent in challenges he had. He wasn't like one of these guys that writes a book and goes out and acts like he has it all together. I mean, because nobody really does, but he was very transparent in that. Look, I'm trying to get better, but it's hard. and it's a struggle, and I'm doing the best I can. And to have a founding father of the country have that kind of humility to be able to say those kind of things about himself is pretty phenomenal. So yeah, those would be two guys that I hold up pretty high.
I dig it. So I know you mentioned a podcast earlier. Do you have any other like must listen tos or must reads as far as resources go?
As far as resources go, well, so yeah, I listen to American Innovations. I also listen to another podcast on Wondery called American History Tellers, which I like for several reasons. One, I'm interested in history, but I like the way they tell it because they make it really interesting. And so that's another one that I like to listen to regularly. And those, other than that, I'm just all over the board. I mean, every little thing. I'll find a book. When I go to the airport to travel, the first thing I do is go to the little book area and scour around. And I always buy a book on a plane trip, even if I don't read it on that trip. I read it eventually, and it just becomes an excuse, to expand out. And I'll usually try to find books that are a little out there and a little different. And so that would be a piece of advice: is, yeah, I'm into innovation and ideas and technology and all that. Fine, American Innovations makes a lot of sense, but try to also go find stuff that doesn't necessarily fit that mold. I'll give you another one that I'm into big time, and that is Atlas Obscura. There is an outfit called Atlas Obscura, and they scour the world looking for interesting little corners and things that you're never going to see Atlas Obscura in a all-inclusive hotel in the Caribbean. They will never go there. They're going to go to some bunker in Ukraine, or into some back alley of India or somewhere where they found something incredible that is interesting and unique, and it's not cookie cutter, And so I get an email from them daily that I read like a comic book. I just can't get enough of that kind of stuff. So and to me, that's just exploring and seeing other things that are out there. I also we've done Kickstarter campaigns, and so I'm on the Kickstarter email list, and I get a little email a couple times a week with the latest Kickstarter projects. And I like to devour that and go in and just see what are other people coming up with, what ideas are they generating. And sometimes they spark things. So.
Well, Brent, thank you for sparking, I believe, a lot out there in those that are watching and listening to this. Thanks for being on with us this morning. I just had to say, this was just absolute gold, Brent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
So we want to thank Brent. We also want to thank Morgan for just further inspiring the dream that is inside each of us. We just want to take a quick moment and share with you a special surprise guest that we're going to have next Monday on Link with Loveworks. And we're going to zoom out of Oklahoma City, and we're going to zoom into Pakistan, where you're going to get a chance to meet our friend Sajid Ali. He is an ambassador for peace and volunteering, and he's the founder of the Learner's Tree in Pakistan. His interest is to work with youth and community services to promote the general welfare of youth and youth participation in the entire society. We had a chance to spend a special time with him over the summer here at Loveworks, and you are just going to be in for an incredible treat next Monday. So just a reminder that you can access the other things that we talked about, all things digital with Loveworks, at loveworksleadership.org.
Remember, real leaders don't blend in, they stand out.
Dream big.
And do your dream.